Well, thanks guys for coming tonight. I'm kind of bummed we're not outside in the nice warm Phoenix summers / spring. I'm from Pittsburgh, so it's a little bit chilly where I'm from, but I've been honored to be here for the past couple of weeks, and I have got one more week in Arizona, so I'm really, really grateful to be here, even if you guys put me inside. But you all are incredibly lucky to be students at ASU, so just when you're like complaining about the heat in a couple of weeks, just remember that. You're lucky because in the winter when everyone else is cold, you're very nice and warm. So I'm here tonight to talk about why I believe the future is anti-abortion. And I know that speech title, talking about an anti-abortion future, is triggering for some people. It aggravates some people, it frustrates some people. And I know if you think about everything that's been happening in Washington, D.C. lately, that title can also seem rapidly out of touch with the political reality that we find ourselves in. But, you know, I think we will have an anti-abortion future. And that's why I'm going to kind of talk with you tonight and hopefully hear some of your thoughts about the future of our country and where we're going in the pro-life anti-abortion movement. I want to start by saying when we talk about abortion, we realize, those of us who serve in the pro-life movement, that there are many people who come to pro-life presentations that have themselves been party to an abortion or maybe facing an unplanned crisis pregnancy right there. Or you may know somebody who's facing an unplanned pregnancy. So I want to give you some hotline numbers for help. We do not talk about being anti-abortion. We don't speak out against the violence of abortion with the goal of hurting those who've been a party to abortion. We speak out about the truth of abortion because we want to help. We want to save lives. We want to save mothers from the pain and the trauma of the abortion industry. So if you do know somebody who is facing an unplanned pregnancy, who needs help, who needs to get connected with free, local, nonviolent resources, they can text the word helpline to the number 313131. If you know somebody who is hurting from a past abortion decision, maybe had an abortion, paid for an abortion, you can go to abortionchangesyou.org or abortionrecovery.org to get connected with local counselors and psychologists in the area who can help and get you on the path of healing, obviously. And if you're Catholic, go speak to Father Cruz as well. So why would I say that I think the future of our movement is going to be victorious, the pro-life movement? Why would I say the future of America is anti-abortion? The political extremism that we've been witnessing in Washington, D.C. has been off the hook. I don't know if anybody's been paying attention, but if I were an alcoholic, I would be drinking all week this week, everything that's coming out of Washington, D.C., okay? Think about everything that's happened. On, was it Tuesday, the FDA pulled the Johnson & Johnson vaccine for COVID, which, by the way, was made with the stem cells of aborted children. They pulled that vaccine from being offered to Americans because 6 people developed deadly blood clots and 1 person died. They pulled it. They said it's not safe, right? I supported that decision. I didn't want the Johnson & Johnson vaccine to come out in the first place because it was made from the stem cells of an aborted human person. But it shouldn't be out if it's killing people. That makes common sense. But the same exact day that the FDA pulled the Johnson & Johnson COVID vaccine, they issued a ruling that chemical abortion drugs, RU486, should be allowed to be dispensed via webcam, via the mail, with no tests involved. The old adage that abortion should be between a woman and her doctor no longer exists. The old adage that abortion should be safe no longer exists because the acting FDA chief, Janet Woodcock, previously argued that we have to make sure that women, before they ingest these dangerous chemicals, are tested to ensure, one, that they're actually pregnant, to ensure the age of their child, to ensure that the pregnancy is not ectopic, meaning that the child hasn't implanted in the fallopian tube, to make sure the woman's not Rh negative, because if she has an abortion and doesn't have a Rogan shot, she'll never be able to carry another child to term again. She argued that at least a woman needs to be evaluated, because over 24 women have died that we know of in America from ingesting these drugs since they were legalized in the early 2000s. But on the same day that the FDA halted the Johnson & Johnson vaccines, they said, no, a woman should be allowed the right to be given these pills via webcam. Abortion not between her and her doctor, but between her and the delivery person at the front door. It makes no sense at all. But that is the reality of what we're dealing with. It was essentially like the tobacco lobby going to the federal government and suing the federal government and saying, take off the warnings off the cigarette cartons. Those aren't necessary. We'll tell all of our clients about the potential risk, and they're fully aware. It's their right to smoke cigarettes. And then the federal government going, you're right, Philip Morris. You'll be responsible and tell women and men and children the dangers of smoking. That's essentially what happened. So I understand, I question myself, my goodness, what is everything going on in Capitol Hill, with everything happening in Washington, D.C., how can we still be facing an anti-abortion future? How is it still possible? Because those in the political left are doing everything possible to make sure abortion is legal in all 9 months of pregnancy for whatever reason, and funded by every single one of us through our tax dollars. And something that happened this week is we cannot get a vote on the Abortion Survivors Infant Protection Act, meaning a child who's accidentally born alive with a beating heart in an abortion facility. We in the pro-life movement have been arguing that that child deserves medical care, life-sustaining medical care, should be transported to the emergency room, to the hospital. We cannot get a vote on that bill because Nancy Pelosi, the leaders of the Democratic Party, refuse to bring that bill up for a vote. So we started a discharge petition, a fancy legislative maneuver to try to force Nancy Pelosi to get 218 members of the House of Representatives to vote on a discharge petition. She'll have to bring it up for a vote. We'll only get 213 because there's only 213 Republicans. We can't find 5 Democrats to vote, to sign a discharge petition to say, yes, we need to vote on protecting children who've been born alive with beating hearts and who are breathing, and give them life-sustaining care. Not extraordinary medicine, just life-sustaining care, oxygen. That's the political reality that we live in. So I get it. It sounds crazy to say the future of America will be anti-abortion. But I still, despite all of that, believe the future of our nation will be anti-abortion. Why? Well, I believe science and technology. Science and technology have proven that what is inside of a mother is a unique, whole, living human being that's never existed before and will never exist again. It is simply science denial to say what is inside of a mother is not a unique human being. Science is definitive. It's been proven. This is settled science. In fact, I would say it's not merely science denial, it's also a phobia. It's fetus phobic. To say this is not a human being, this is not a person, just to outright deny the humanity of another human being simply because they're an inconvenience to you. Simply because you're unwilling to acknowledge the consequences, the natural consequences, when you engage in heterosexual sex. Because that's what happens. It's science denial to say it's not a human being. And the abortion lobby knows this. In fact, just a couple months ago, the Washington Post had an article written by a pro-abortion supporter who was actually lamenting at the fact that the abortion lobby led by Planned Parenthood, they are the abortion lobbyists in Washington, D.C. and across America because they're funded with our tax dollars. They're the abortion Goliath, lamenting the fact that the abortion lobby keeps using all these antiquated terms. They keep saying it's a blob of tissue, but everybody knows it's not a blob of tissue because if you've ever met a pregnant woman, if you've ever seen an ultrasound, you know what's inside of her is not simply a worthless blob of tissue. We can see our brothers and sisters, our nieces and nephews, our sons and daughters in the womb sucking their thumb, moving, kicking. It's simply science denial to say that what is inside of a mother is not a unique, whole, living human being. Look at the facts. At 21 days after conception, the heart begins to beat. At 6 weeks after the mother's last menstrual cycle, brainwave activity can be detected. Leg bones have formed. Tooth buds have formed. At 7 weeks, the heart is complete. The baby is able to hiccup, rotate his or her head, and move his or her legs. At 8 weeks, fingers and toes are webbed but growing. Urine production begins. At 8 weeks. This is like the thing that my kids love, that they found out that they peed inside of me. They think it's hilarious. The picture, I have a video of my daughter, the only birth I have on video. We finally got with her. And she was born via C-section, and as soon as she came out of the womb, made her appearance, she instantly peed. And she wants to see the video all the time of her peeing in my stomach. And they replay it at my house of Gracie peeing in my stomach. Babies urinate. I think that's so fascinating. My kids do anyway. At 9 weeks, a baby can suck his or her thumb. The baby can yawn. At 10 weeks, fingernails and toenails start to grow, and unique fingerprints have been formed. At 12 weeks, there's taste buds all over his or her mouth. At 13 weeks, pro-life and pro-choice scientists agree that the child's body is sensitive to touch. This is the first trimester. This is when the majority of abortions are committed in our land. You may like the label pro-choice. I get it. Sometimes the pro-life label carries with it certain connotations. People have certain feelings about the pro-life label. You may like to agree with the my body, my choice mantra because it sounds cool, or if you heard somebody you like say it. But to deny that life begins at conception, that human life is present, that what is inside of mother is living and growing, that's science denial. That's crazy, and that is fetus phobic because you're willing to deny science in order to support your position for abortion. That's what it is. I'm also confident that our future will be anti-abortion because in addition to everything that science and technology are showing and proving to us, I trust the videos and the pictures we've seen from current and former abortionists who've shot training videos of how abortion techniques are committed in order to train other abortionists. That I trust those videos and those pictures that we've seen, that every single abortion is an act of violence. Every abortion ends in violence. It's a violent act. And it's proven. You can go to Google. You can type in abortion photos, abortion training videos, and you will see what happens every single day. In fact, 972 times a day inside Planned Parenthood facilities across America. It's not empowerment, it's not choice, it's plain violence. Because whether you like to admit it or not, an abortionist only will know success in his or her job if a beating heart stops beating. If you're an abortionist and you fail to stop a beating heart, you failed to commit an abortion. That's the reality. Every abortion stops a beating heart. A beating human heart of a living, growing, unique individual. And this is not something that pro-life and pro-choice disagree on. Like, that's definitive. That's what happens in an abortion. For any of you who have, friends or family, or if you may support abortion or may have supported abortion, I would encourage you to encourage them to look up what happens during an abortion procedure. Have any of you ever done that? Have you ever looked up what happens in a procedure? It's gruesome. It's disgusting. It's violence. Chemical abortion, I talked about earlier, about 40% of abortions today in America are committed using chemical abortion. It's a great technique for the abortion industry because their number one challenge of disposing of the children, they have to either incinerate them, pay Stericycle to come get them to incinerate them. In Oregon, they were being burned for fuel. Sometimes they use these special dishwashers, and they'll put chemicals in the dishwasher, and then the child and the fetal tissue and the placenta, everything goes into the public sewer, the septic tank. There was a National Abortion Federation. They're like the union for the abortionists. There was a session a couple years ago that was filmed by my friend undercover, and it was an interesting session to listen to, where the abortionists were complaining with each other about they didn't know what to do with all the bodies. And so we see this all the time when abortionists die. There was a case just a couple years ago, Dr. Koffler, he was an abortionist, and they found dozens and dozens of human children in his garage. Like, he didn't dispose of them. That was like all over the news in Indiana. And these children had to be buried. It's a huge problem. But chemical abortion solves the problem because a woman takes a pill at the clinic. It stops the hormone from releasing nutrition to the child, which starves the child. And then she takes another pill at home that induces labor contractions. And then she's told to sit on the toilet and flush. Do not look. And the goal is everything gets evacuated into the toilet, and she doesn't see, they don't have to dispose of the child. The reality is about 5% of the times, and this is like across the world in all the studies that they do on chemical abortion, 5% of the time the abortion fails to be complete, meaning parts of the child, part of the placenta are left inside of the uterus. She has to go back to the abortionist to get a surgical abortion anyway. 5 to 8% of the time, she'll end up in the emergency room with pain, severe bleeding, hemorrhage. But for them, it's a pretty good deal because they're not actively having to dismember a human. They don't have to put the child back together to make sure they got all the parts, and they don't have to pay the disposal fee. Suction abortion happens. Majority of abortions, I would say, are suction abortion. They happen in the first trimester. This is when a suction curette that is 29 times more powerful than a household vacuum is put into a woman's uterus, and the baby's body is sucked apart, and the placenta, the organ that forms to sustain the child, it all goes into a container. It's the most common type of abortion. There's a D&C abortion, which is used throughout the 12th, 13th week. After dilating the cervix, a curette is inserted into the uterus. The baby's body is cut and extracted, often through suction. The uterine wall is scraped with the curette. Here, I think I have one. Yep. They'll scrape the uterine wall. It just has like a little loop and a little bit of teeth, and they'll scrape the uterine wall to make sure they've got everything. A D&E is the most common type of second trimester abortion. Now, some people like to argue that abortion isn't legal after the first trimester. Now, the majority of abortions, 90% of abortions, happen in the first trimester in America. But because of Roe v. Wade and its companion case, Doe v. Bolton, that were handed down the same day, abortion is actually legal in all 9 months. Now, the Supreme Court in Casey v. Planned Parenthood said that states have a right to limit abortion. So in some states, abortion is legal to 24 weeks. Some states, it can be legal 18 weeks. Other states are going even further and trying to pass laws banning abortion earlier and earlier. But there are states where abortion is allowed until a birthday abortion. New Mexico, for example, is the late-term abortion capital of the world. There's a late-term abortion facility right on the campus at University of New Mexico that commits abortions into 37 weeks. In fact, women fly from all over the world to have these abortions. And that abortionist is pretty well known. There's an abortionist in Maryland outside of Washington, D.C. that splits his time between Germantown, Gaithersburg, Maryland, and Omaha, Lincoln, Nebraska area. And he does 3 days a week in Maryland, 3 days a week in Nebraska. About 1.2 to 1.3% of all abortions in America are committed in the late term. So that's about 11 to 12,000 children every year that are aborted. Now, these D&E abortions, they're legal here in Arizona. They can be committed up roughly until about 18 weeks. There was an Arizona abortionist recently who was caught undercover saying she was trying to do them at 21 weeks, but because the child's skull was so developed, she was having to work out the gym to make sure she had the muscle to collapse the child's skull. At 20 weeks, the child's pretty well developed. As you all know, a child can feel pain. It's universally recognized that a child can feel pain at 18 weeks. Children can survive outside the womb about 22 weeks. And this is a difficult procedure, even for the abortionist to commit, because what happens is you have to locate the fetus, the child in the uterus, and then you have to take Sofer clamps. These have teeth, they're very sharp, and they lock. You have to take this clamp after you've dilated the cervix, and you have to go in and locate the child, grab limbs first, you lock, you twist, and you pull down. And this is how a child is dismembered. The child is awake, is alive, and can feel pain when this is happening. Limbs are first removed, then the skull will be crushed, and this is the part that the abortionist here, the former Planned Parenthood abortionist, she now operates an independent facility here. This is very hard, it gets hardened. And then what happens is the pieces have to be removed, they're collected at the end of the bed in the pan. They take the pan to the POC lab, the products of conception lab, where they actually have, if they're a good abortionist, they will put together the child, piece the child together, make sure that all the pieces of the child are counted and present, to make sure that all of the placenta has been removed so the woman does not see an infection develop. That's a second trimester abortion. Now, a third trimester abortion used to be done with the partial birth abortion method. The Supreme Court in 2007 finally said this was so gruesome that it had to be limited. There was other ways to kill a child later in the pregnancy, and I won't describe that. But then I'm going to talk about how the late-term abortions are committed here in America today. This is third trimester. It's a heart attack abortion. And a heart attack abortion is when a drug, digoxin, is inserted into the child's heart. The goal of the drug is to induce cardiac arrest. So they use a needle like this, kind of like they do in the amniocentesis, use ultrasound guided technology. It goes through the mother's abdomen, into the child, to pierce the child. They inject this drug into the child, and it produces a heart attack. And then her cervix, they insert Lomaria seaweed into her cervix, and then a couple days later, she delivers a dead child. I hope that bothered you. That's fact. You can look all this up. The abortion lobby gets very angry when you describe the abortion procedure and what happens in the violence of the abortion procedure, but everything here is factual. In fact, I took the description of the D&E from a National Abortion Federation training website. This is what happens in an abortion. If you are okay with this, then you should proudly call yourself pro-abortion. If this causes you to be squeamish, if this causes you to say, I could never do that, then you're with me. Congratulations, even if you don't like me, you're with me. I think the truth of this, the fact that every single abortion is an act of violence, is why we will see an anti-abortion future. I also believe, when I think about all the reasons why our future will and can be anti-abortion, I believe that we will see this happen. We will see a nation that rejects the violence and extremism of abortion because, thankfully, our generation believes that human life matters. We protest on the street all the time, saying Black lives matter, Asian lives matter. We're willing to do hard things in order to stand up for other people, to speak out for the vulnerable, for the oppressed. Despite, for nearly 5 decades, us taking the lives of these little children, more than 50 million of them, we actually haven't lost our humanity. We still believe that human life has value, and I actually think that's a good thing. And we're willing to speak out, to protest. We're willing to be keyboard warriors sometimes, maybe a little too much keyboard warrioring, not enough street warrioring, but we're willing to speak out, and that's a good thing. We're willing to take a stand against violence, to say we reject violence, that we envision something better, even if that something better is hard or means a difficult conversation or policy changes have to be made. We're willing to go there. Now, when the mainstream media talk about our generation and your generation, I'm technically, if you talk to an older person, that meant your generation, but you all would reject me and say I'm an old person. I'm only 35. I'll be 36 next month, but I'm having a difficult one. That's a difficult birthday, just because it's the downward slope, countdown to 40, by the way. Just wait. But when you ask people how they view this generation, they'll say, oh, they're liberal and all these issues. And whether you're politically liberal, politically conservative, I don't actually care. But that's the perception, is that this is and it is, if you look polling, it's the most liberal voting bloc. Thankfully, we're only ever 18% of the vote. That's a good thing. I don't want to do any more voter reg. But we're not tolerant of abortion like everyone would say we are. We may be political liberals, we may call ourselves Democrats, independents, whatever, but we're not okay with abortion, despite 50 years, essentially, of rhetoric being shoved down our throats that it's a woman's right to choose her body, her choice. We're still not okay with abortion. Like, it's still not, that rhetoric still isn't working. We did some polling this year, and I don't really trust people's polling because you can make any poll sound any way you want, depending on how you word the questions, because unfortunately people are incredibly not smart sometimes when it comes to polls. So I actually asked the question in our polling in January to 18 to 34-year-olds, how do you feel about Roe v. Wade? Good, bad. That's all I asked. Wasn't surprised, the majority of 18 to 34-year-olds said they liked Roe v. Wade. Read them a sentence. Did you know Roe v. Wade and its companion case, Doe v. Bolton, legalized abortion all 9 months for any reason? That's all I said. Re-asked the same question, 56% said they were not okay with Roe v. Wade and Doe v. Bolton. Less than 2 out of 10, less than 20% of 18 to 34-year-olds that we surveyed, using an actual honest poll, because I wrote the damn questions, I would know, we're okay with abortion in all 9 months for any reason and funded by taxpayers, which, by the way, is the current political platform of the Democratic National Committee. Sorry if you're a Democrat, but you have some work to do. I also think that we're going to see an anti-abortion future, an anti-abortion America, not only because of science, technology, not only because of the violence is being uncovered, what's happening inside the abortion industry, not only because our generation rejects violence and willing to speak out. I also think we'll see an anti-abortion future because women are sick of the gaslighting that the abortion industry continues to do. They're speaking out about their stories. In fact, I was somewhere today over in Mesa, and I was speaking to some telemarketing firm. And these are men and women who make fundraising phone calls to ask people to support Students for Life America. But they're not necessarily, when they start working for us, pro-life. We convert them to pro-life. That's our job. But the woman who just started working there came up and shared her story about, and I thought it was pretty profound because she was sharing with me a lot. Her life, she was abused in her biological home. She went to foster care. She was abused in foster care, became pregnant at 17. Her foster sister helped her get an abortion. And she talked about how, she felt like she had to get the abortion. She was in this terrible situation. And she said to me, no one talks to you about after. Everyone told her about how she couldn't have the child, but no one talks about after. And she went on to talk about how it took 10 years of healing from the situation that she had grown up in, the abuse she had suffered at the hands of her family, the abuse she had suffered in the hands of her foster family, then the trauma of having the abortion, the pain, the guilt, the shame that went along with having the abortion. But no one ever talks about that. There was an actress recently, I saw it on Facebook, from The Good Place, Jamil. I don't watch TV, but it sounded like it was a really big deal on Facebook. The quote, though, was, she said, having a baby can, quote, and I apologize, fucking ruin everything. That was her quote. Ruin everything. For a lot of women who've experienced abortion, who've gone through with abortion, who are led to believe that abortion was their empowerment, was their great right that they were exercising, it was the abortion that ruined everything, not the baby. We know abortion harms women physically and psychologically. Sadly, in the United States of America, you can't actually even get a lot of times accurate information about abortion statistics because we have no abortion reporting law. States don't actually have to report their abortion numbers. They can voluntarily report them. If you actually want good abortion statistics, I look up numbers from countries where abortion really isn't controversial. A lot of Scandinavian countries, they'll do research because their government actually monitors the number of abortions, and they'll do research. And it doesn't matter if it's here in the United States, if it's in China, if it's in Finland or Norway, if it's in Italy. There are long-term physical and short-term effects that abortion cause. They can cost a woman her fertility, lead to preterm birth. That's actually a common side effect, is preterm birth. In fact, the second question I got asked every time I went into an OB when I was pregnant with my 4 children, after being asked how I was going to pay for delivery, and they're like, what do you want, C-section or natural? It's $1,000 more for C-section. I'm like, they should wait a little bit before you ask that. But the second question they ask you at the doctor is, how many live births have you had? How many miscarriages? And how many abortions? Because it's common knowledge, if you have an abortion, you are susceptible to preterm birth. You can have cervix damage that can lead to challenges with your health and certainly with your child's health. Psychologically, we know women can suffer PTSD, suicidal ideation, nervous disorders, substance abuse, inability to bond with future children or other living children. We know abortion isn't great for women, but we don't care. That's what the FDA literally said this week, is access trumps safety. Safe, legal, and rare, all they care about is legal. Because they dropped rare a couple years ago in their mantra, because they realized if you have rhetoric and you're saying something should be rare, you're sort of admitting there's something wrong with it, right? That's like propaganda 101. If abortion's so great, why the hell should it be rare? So they dropped that out. So now the protest signs have been abortion, safe and legal. We know the FDA, ACOG, the American College of OB/GYNs, who sued the FDA. It wasn't, by the way, women who asked the FDA to drop the regulations saying that they couldn't go into an abortion facility to kill their children. No, it was ACOG, supposed to be this, nonpartisan association of OB/GYNs, which is rabidly pro-abortion and punishes pro-life OB/GYNs. It was ACOG that sued the FDA to take off the restrictions. It was State Attorney General Javier Becerra of California, in midst of the COVID crisis, who led the charge of state AGs. Now he's Health and Human Services Secretary, and by the way, has zero experience with anything medical, and his only experience in medical field is suing nuns, Catholic hospitals over abortion, but whatever. We know abortion hurts women, but they don't care. The FDA pulled a vaccine that's supposed to save thousands because one person died and 5 people almost died. And then in the same day said, 24 women died and it's a little dangerous. And, if they take this and don't have any Rogan or Arch, they'll never be able to have kids again. But that's okay. They don't care. I think that's the largest misconception that we tend to have when we talk about Planned Parenthood and the abortion industry. And there's a lot of women, there's a lot of men who get into the pro-choice movement because they care about women. And then they find out and they go and work in the industry and realize it's really not. It's a business. If it wasn't a business, then why the heck if it's not a business, why would they have sales quotas? They actually have to sell at Planned Parenthood. They get in trouble if they do not commit X number of abortions every single month. They have sales quotas for themselves. They don't care. Abortion is not good for women. And every couple years, there's these attempts to celebrate abortion, to make it this cool thing. Say abortion is good, it's a social good. There was a woman, I remember, she got abortion tattooed inside of her lip, and she made an abortion dress. And her whole thing was to get rid of the stigma. They wanted women across America to wear t-shirts exclaiming they had abortions. Those things never catch on. Women are sick of this having to pretend like they're going to celebrate this. It's a form of gaslighting. If you've ever been in front of a Planned Parenthood or an abortion facility, sidewalk counseling, or praying on a Saturday morning, a day they're committing abortions, what's going on in that clinic is not bodily autonomy. It's not freedom. It's not empowerment. Because if it were empowerment, why wouldn't she be excited when she got to the clinic on Saturday morning? Why wouldn't there be excitement and a buzz in the air that she was going to express her freedom? It's always sad. It's sad when she goes in. It's even worse when she comes out. And it's gaslighting to continually say, if you feel a little bit of, pain about your abortion, if you feel a little bit of regret, there's something wrong with you. You were messed up before you had that abortion. It wasn't us that did it to you. You were already messed up. That is gaslighting. And that's exactly what the abortion industry has done to millions of women who've come out and shared their stories. Go to silentnommoreawareness.org. There's literally tens of thousands of testimonies from men and women who just freely share their story. They're not being compensated. No one knows who they are, but they're just sharing their stories about how abortion hurt them physically or mentally, what abortion did to the relationship in her life, how abortion didn't actually solve any of the problems, didn't take her out of poverty, didn't end the abusive relationship. In fact, and many times it further extended it, exacerbated it. And finally, I think our future, our nation will be anti-abortion because women no longer have to believe the lie that we need abortion in order to succeed. I know women don't have abortions because they think it's empowerment. They're not at the abortion facility at 6 a.m. on Saturday morning because it's some awesome thing. Two of the most common reasons women choose abortion, who say they have to have abortion, is because their relationship with their partner is unstable, he's pressuring her to have an abortion, and or she's financially insecure. And a baby that's come into existence underscores all of these very real problems that she's facing. It's true. In the short term, it can seem easier to get rid of the human child than deal with the problems. But ending the human life is not going to fix, is not going to solve the situation she's in. Instead of looking for tangible ways to offer help, to offer solutions, to offer support, we just send her down to the abortionist. We're actually kind of lazy as a society. We outsource it to them, who are basically ready and willing to profit off of her despair, off of her crisis. But the truth is, today in 2021 America, she doesn't have to choose between the life of her child and her education or her career. While things aren't perfect, she has more rights than ever before. She has a society that supports and actually will celebrate single motherhood if the dad refuses to be a man. There's thousands, more than 3,000 pregnancy centers and maternity homes across the country. There's fewer than 600 abortion facilities who are willing, by the way, to do anything possible. She walks into a pregnancy center, I guarantee you they will do anything they can to help her choose life and to support herself and her child after her child's born. There are real people putting real solutions and resources together across the country, community by community. And by the way, those people also happen to be anti-abortion. They are the pro-life movement. We're finding ways to provide housing, childcare, emotional support, job development, material assistance, parenting classes. We're the ones doing that work. And I think we're the ones who are helping her see that there actually is a nonviolent alternative, a nonviolent choice. Now, we still have a lot of work to do. In fact, I believe our biggest challenge in the pro-life movement isn't the lack of awareness about the development of a human child or lack of awareness about the violence of abortion. Most people, even if they call themselves pro-choice, instinctively in their gut realize this. That's why they don't actually ever want to debate or talk about abortion, because they don't really want to have to admit to themselves what is inside of a woman is a living human being. Because if they do, they might have to make different choices and decisions in their life, right? I actually think that's not our biggest problem. I think our biggest problem is our lack of awareness of the nonviolent alternatives and resources that are available in our communities. In fact, we did some polling. The polling I mentioned earlier, not only did we ask people about young people about their views on abortion, and abortion legality, and taxpayer funding of abortion, we asked them how to help women in their community. Had they ever seen an ad for Planned Parenthood? Had they ever seen an ad for the abortion industry? Had they ever seen a marketing ad for a non-violent pregnancy center? Vast majority didn't know. Said they didn't know where to send a friend who was in a pregnancy that was a crisis that didn't want to have an abortion. That is a major problem. That's something that at Students for Life that we are focusing on. I'll be spending millions of dollars this year trying to solve. And actually, Phoenix is one of our test cities for that. We're actually going door to door in this city, knocking on neighbors' doors, educating them about the violence that's happening inside the Planned Parenthood, and telling them about the alternatives that are available. It's phenomenal, the results that we're seeing. But I think that's actually our biggest problem. The analogy I came up to kind of think about this is like when I went to Yellowstone, took my kids to Yellowstone. The first time we took our camper, we were living in Minnesota, and I packed everything. I made all the anal retentive type A personality lists, how many socks and underwear every child, it's 6 people and a dog, how many pairs of socks and underwear and clothes each person was going to need to have, how much kind of food. I've got 2 children with cystic fibrosis, so we have medicine vials and pills and all this stuff. I counted out I need 12,463 enzymes for my son and so many for my daughter. I had to do all this stuff, right? And I had it done. We were eating paleo, which, by the way, don't try to camp and do paleo because you have to bring a lot of spices and weird stuff, and they have no Trader Joe's, anywhere in Montana or Wyoming. Now, Jackson Hole was different, but it was very hard. So I made this whole list, and I got everybody, I made these little binders of like activity sheets for the kids, got them like little tickets for every like hour that they were quiet in the car. They got a ticket they could redeem for $1 to Dollar Tree. Like I had it down, right? But I forgot to do one thing, and I have never forgotten to do this thing since. I forgot to print out a map. Of course, if I'm a type A person, at least one of my children is going to be type A, and it's my oldest. I forgot to print out a map. Now, Gunnar wasn't fully functional, like reading yet. He was only hooked on phonics, but he wasn't. But all I needed to do is put like a star in Minnesota and like a star in Montana, which was our first night. And like, you know, like little like dots along the way where we're going to stop for restroom or we're going to have lunch. Like that would have saved my husband and I hundreds of are we there yet? How much longer? I'm so bored. When can we stop? I have to pee. Like this was hours. It was a 12-and-a-half-hour day. But because I failed to print out the map. So I had to do. It would cost me like, I don't know, 25 cents on my computer printer. And I feel like that is what's wrong with the pro-life movement, where we kind of have gone astray in the pro-life movement. We have this vision of an anti-abortion future, of a nation where abortion is no longer legal, where abortion is unthinkable. We are setting up pregnancy centers, maternity homes. We're doing all this work, but we fail to bring along everybody with us to say, this is our roadmap. This is where we're going. It's not as scary as you think. By the way, here are all of our resources. If someone gave me $1 billion and I'm actively looking for this person, give me $1 billion, send abortion, please. If someone gave me that $1 billion tonight, maybe one of you, I don't know if your parents are rich, I would put like 900 million of it into marketing. Because we haven't lost our humanity. We know what happens in abortion is wrong. Some of us are kind of selfish. We don't want to admit it. Some of us are just plain stubborn. There's a few that are kind of stupid, but most of them aren't. They all just happen to like be in Congress. But all we have to do, I firmly believe this, to achieve this anti-abortion future, is we have to show her a way. Show her a way, because she doesn't want to have the abortion. She's desperate. That's why when you're in front of the abortion facility, if you've ever spoken to a woman in front of an abortion facility, and you try to get her talking about why she's there, how can you help her, she'll freely admit. She doesn't use the rhetoric of the political left, like, I just have to get this blob of tissue out, or this parasite out of me right now. You never hear that language in front of an abortion facility. You'll hear it on a college campus from somebody who's like majoring in biology and tries to be a smarty pants. But you don't hear it in front of the abortion facility. What you hear at the abortion facility is, I can't have my baby right now. I just can't have this baby. It's a baby to her. And she's making a decision, and she knows it's a little selfish, but she feels like she has to choose between her life or her child's life. And we can stop that feeling. We can say, you don't have to do that. Here are all the resources. Here's our roadmap for an anti-abortion and anti-violence future, and we'll walk alongside you. So there's my reasons. And I don't think I'm crazy. Who has questions? Come up.
The question I have is, given COVID-19 and the need to work remotely, could this be useful to help pregnant women in financial situations? Like if they can just work remotely from home, would that help mitigate the financial situations of pregnancy?
Yeah, I mean, as a working mother, working from home is a little challenging. But yes, absolutely. I mean, it's one of the things that's been so interesting of this phenomenon within like Fortune 500 companies has been like, wait a minute, we want to retain our talent. People, women, we've invested in talent, we've invested. So we need to make our businesses more parenting and pregnant friendly. And so it's actually something that we've been working on. We've been lobbying for a paid family leave policy, for example, that helps out small businesses, doesn't force small businesses to pay taxes, that's, you know, comes out of your own Social Security. So yeah, there's there's a lot that we can do. I do think the COVID work from home phenomenon has shown a lot of businesses that were maybe apprehensive to allowing people to work from home that it is possible. And guess what? Working moms are like the best employees you can have, because working moms are not going to waste any time. Like, they want to get their shit done and then take care of their babies. And so they are super productive. I don't know about working dads, but working moms are amazing. We have like a ton of them at Students for Life. But I think it actually has helped. We'll see, like, as like the shutdowns cease and how businesses start to adapt. But I think there's gonna be a lot. Like, for example, for me, I used to travel 3 to 4 days a week, and we went from March until end of January was the first time I've been away from my kids in almost a year. And I'm gonna have to give up all my frequent flyer status programs. Delta keeps sending me emails. American keeps sending me emails. They really miss me. But we're just not willing as a family anymore to really travel apart. So we're actually traveling together. So my family's actually up in Cottonwood in the camper, and my husband keeps sending me updates about what's happening with all 4 children in the camper. But we're trying to make it work where we're traveling together as a family, and we're saying, hey, this is we did it during COVID, we survived, and let's do it now. So I do think it's gonna be very helpful for working moms. Sorry, I can talk about that all day. It's some sort of passion of mine, but. Thanks. Other questions? My son did very good on his state test, by the way. He's homeschooled, so I always get kind of nervous. Like, you want to come up? Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was supposed to tell you that.
So, by the way, thank you for coming and speaking. I was wondering, you mentioned that many women who get abortions mention that they feel pressured by another man or maybe their significant other. So obviously the influence of men is really important in the future of the pro-life movement, just like how they spread the message and such. So what do you see is most impactful, and like what's the best way that men can spread like the pro-life message and be a good influence?
Yeah, I can answer that better in about a year. We just finished a $450,000 research study on women who are 18 to 29 who said, I don't like abortion, but we found some really fascinating information, and we're doing the same thing for men. So I'll let you know. But what we found so far, we've been doing some like pre-research focus groups of pro-life young men, men that go out on the sidewalks and counsel men who've dropped off their girlfriends and their wives in front of the abortion facility. And the biggest thing that we have seen isn't really that we have to tell men to be pro-life or be natural protectors, because you kind of are or supposed to be. We actually have to tell you to be a man. Because for almost 5 decades, men have kind of been neutered. And sit down, shut up, you don't have an opinion on this. And their mothers and their grandmothers have told them, you have no opinion on this. And we have to basically give men permission to be men and say, no, you are a man, be a damn man. And I think that's actually really important. When I wrote a book years ago, and I didn't really have the time to write a book, and so I did the easy way. I said, let's just interview a bunch of student stories, and that's the best way to write a book, by the way, tell our people stories. And it was fascinating because we started interviewing like Students for Life leaders, like people who had stood up on their campus, had faced discrimination, or had saved a life of a child. And we kind of stumbled onto this, but we ended up having 2 camps. We had women who had chosen abortion and then became later pro-life. And then we had women who faced a crisis pregnancy, had placed with an adoptive family, or became parents. And what's fascinating was, and no one really caught onto it until the end, and I was like, oh, hello. Every single woman who was a student in crisis who chose life or chose to place an adoptive family found one person in her life to tell her no. In fact, Andrea, she was a student in St. Louis that we interviewed. She ended up placing her child with an adoptive family. She was going to take a chemical abortion pill, and she called 9 people in one night and kept asking them, what should I do? What should I do? 8 people told her, it's your decision, do what you want, your body, your choice. And that's code word to a pregnant woman in crisis to have the abortion. It wasn't until she got to the 9th person who said, you don't have to do this, she didn't do it. And I asked her, I was like, why did you call like 9 people? Like, why didn't you just stop at like 2? And she was like, I don't know. And I was like, do you think you were calling because you were waiting for someone to say, you don't have to do this? All of the students that we spoke with who chose abortion never found that person. So we need men to say, no, you don't have to do this. I'll support you. We'll make this work. Like, we don't have to get married if you hate my guts or whatever, or I'll adopt the child and you can leave. That's actually what we need. We need men just to say, you don't have to do this. Because if you look at the Guttmacher stats, the number one, 87% of women who go in for abortion say they lack partner support. So, be men. We love men. Even though women are the superior sex, sorry. We can gestate other human beings. You can't. I'm sorry. Just deal with it. Other questions? He's like, I don't know what to say to that.
Just thank you for sharing your journey and your work that you do with us here. I appreciate that.
Thanks for wearing a sweater. I would be dying right now. But
I like to be
You're like,
cozy. Cozy's my middle name. No, I'm kidding. These conversations happen, but they don't happen often. And you're talking about marketing earlier, and if you had $1 billion, most of it would go to marketing. What have been some successful marketing strategies in the past, and what are some, hopefully, some expensive yet successful, plans that you have for the future in terms of marketing?
Kevin has one. What's yours?
Clearly, cameras will be involved.
Oh, there's so many exciting. Yeah, my personal favorite was Planned Parenthood Go Fund Yourself. But no, that I would, if I had $1 billion, I would put like a cool 50 million in that because that's just funny. I think there was a significant shift in the late 90s. There was some research done of women in crisis. And up until that point, it was kind of the moniker for when a pregnancy center was advertising the resources, they always focused on the baby. Like, don't kill the baby, we'll help your baby. And what they found was women aren't thinking about the baby, they're thinking about themselves. Because, and I know this is hard, it sounds hard, but abortion is a selfish decision. It's choosing another. It's not choosing another, it's choosing yourself, right? It's actually a very low level form of happiness if you've ever read Father Spitzer's stuff. And so what they did was they got the pro-life pregnancy center movement to stop focusing on the baby and focus on her and help her get out of her crisis. Because crisis pregnancy is like a tunnel vision. Like, you can't see left, you can't see right. Like, all you can see is like, I gotta get out of this, I gotta get out of this crisis, right? And it's like, we need to open up the tunnel a little bit and be like, calm down, there's help. We can help you. And I think that was significant in the pro-life movement of focusing on her. Something that our communications director has been working with us on is being more positive now, though, because on a lot of the ads, it's always women are crying. And Planned Parenthood, when you look at Planned Parenthood's ads, it's like, got gonorrhea? I don't know, it's sex positive is the term. It's always happy. It's very interesting. I don't think I would be smiling if I had genital warts, but that's the new thing. But it's an interesting idea of being positive in the ads instead of always having a crying woman. And so that's actually something we've been testing out because that's what Planned Parenthood does. And hey, they have billions of dollars. We give them, a quarter of it every year. We should take our cues from them. If that's working and people are like, I have chlamydia, then why don't we try the smiles? So that's something that we're focusing on. Something else that we've been focusing on has been just telling the truth about the abortion extremism. Because when we were knocking on doors before the election, and it was funny because we had all these students knocking on doors and a lot of them weren't super fans of the person we were going to all be voting for. but we were doing it for the babies, and we were knocking on doors, and I was there in Philadelphia, and I was talking to all these people, and they had already voted early voting, and so it was a waste of my conversation, because I was like, well, crap, you're not going to, but I was like, well, let me try to convert this person. And it was fascinating, because all these people who voted for the pro-abortion candidate, Joe Biden, when you told them about abortion and like the extremism and what Joe Biden was promising, they were like, what? Huh? I was like, how do you not know this information? And they just didn't know. So I think that is very important to talk about the extremism of abortion. Like, this is extremism. You may like the label pro-choice, or you may be like, oh, I'm okay with abortion, but like, nobody is okay with late-term abortion. Nobody is okay with forcing doctors and nurses and pharmacists to have to commit abortions or be complicit in abortion or face arrest, which, by the way, is what H.R. 5, the Equality Act, is going to do. That's currently already been passed the House. It's in the Senate. So I think that's important. We're seeing in Phoenix, in the ad testing we're doing right now, we're seeing a 33% conversion rate. Just talking about, did you know this about Planned Parenthood? Did you know this about the abortion industry? And we actually ask people their views, do a true or false quiz, and then re-ask them. So I actually know what my conversion percentage is. Something that we found from our research study this year is that a lot of women, they don't like abortion, but they see abortion as kind of a parachute that everyone kind of can get one. It's really interesting. Pro-choice women will say they don't judge other women. Talk to them about women who've had more than one abortion. They get really judgy with them. It's very interesting, but it's kind of like this thing in their head of like, well, I kind of just need this parachute there, just in case the plane starts to go down. It's very interesting. We also saw that in a lot of the research, they didn't like abortion, but they didn't want to call themselves pro-life because they viewed having an opinion as extremism, and extremism was bad. I'm like, well, no, actually, you do have an opinion. You say you're in the middle, but that means you're tolerating this violence. So we've been focusing on language like abortion hurts, but it doesn't have to be this way, is a message that we've been using. Another message we've been using is see her strength, that you are strong, that you don't have to choose this destruction, that you already in your gut instinctively know is kind of wrong. So I can talk about that all day. Kevin's like, shut up. Another question.
Hey there. So
Hello.
Hello. My question was, it pertained to the current situation we pro-lifers find ourselves in today. Since we pro-lifers came from a period of 4 years where we had many victories riding the Trump train, but now we're, going through a period where we're probably not going to be seeing many pro-life victories. What would be the main vehicle that we would use, especially during this time of, kind of gloom?
To see victory?
Yeah.
I think it depends on what you consider a victory, because I see victories every day because we're changing minds and we're saving lives and we're helping women. So it doesn't really matter who's in Washington, D.C. or how stupid or idiotic or bought and paid for by the abortion lobby they are. We still see victories in the pro-life movement every single day. We always do. And that doesn't change. It doesn't mean that we should put our head in the sand, though, about what's happening in Washington, D.C. I think when you're thinking about what's happening in Washington, D.C., it should give people resolve to fight harder and to speak up and to continue to be loud and vocal. And actually right now, with all the insanity that's happening, is a great opportunity to show pro-choice friends and family the extremism of the abortion lobby. This is what they're about. They are not about, oh, maybe some abortion if a woman has been a victim of sexual assault, which everyone just likes to view abortion like that. What they're about is whenever, wherever, not even committed by a doctor anymore and paid for by your taxpayer dollars. Like, no one likes that. So now you can use this terrible stuff that's happening in Washington, D.C. The fact that they're willing to throw away our entire constitutional republic. Let's add in 4 more Supreme Court. Why not have 100 at this point? Why stop at 4? Why are they willing to do that? Over one thing: abortion. They are terrified that the day we know near is coming, right? Like they know Roe is like crappy legal reasoning. Like even pro-choice scholars said that in 1973, like, can't believe you decided on this. They know it's not good. And so they fear that day. And so that's why, I mean, this is all over abortion. And so I think now's the time when we can't do anything, we can speak up. We can be a pain in the butt. Your new like little senator, Mark Kelly, who pretended to be like a conservative, who's like this arch liberal pro-abort, needs to be hearing from you like every day because he's actually up for re-election. And the only good thing about politicians is that they're self-interested in wanting to get re-elected. So make him feel pain in a non-physical way.
Non-physical pain.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank
We're
you.
anti-violence, of course. But make him feel mental anguish. How about that?
Hello.
Hi.
So I have a question. You brought up the fact that there are no statistics really based in the United States on how many abortions are happening per state or other data in that nature.
There are some.
There's
yeah,
some, but
yeah.
not a good amount. And so we're looking to Scandinavian countries as well as other countries to have that data. What are those countries doing as far as the pro-life movement in those countries, and how are we either communicating with them, or is there some sort of communication?
It's not great. Many of them do have pro-life movements. We have a kind of a loose kind of collective with different organizations abroad. We have a sister organization in Canada we work with. It's run by one of our former student leaders. We took a mission trip down to Australia. You want to talk about free speech suppression, try to go to Australia and do anything. It's freaking nuts. Huh? Yeah, they're pretty crazy. So there are, Scotland, there's a great group. They come to our national conference. There's a Students for Life group now in Britain. There's a group in Poland. There's a group in Italy. There's a group in Spain. So one of our former staffers has started Pro-Life Europe and has taken all of our stuff and is kind of trying to mold it. So we do have like a loose collective where we try to share best practices and ideas. We are the largest anti-abortion youth organization in the world, but it doesn't really work so well if you go to another country and be like, listen to the Americans tell you how to do this. It doesn't really work. So we just offer suggestions and tips, and we're there as we can help. But sadly, in a lot of those countries, especially the Scandinavian countries, it's the pro-life movement.
So even with
not.
that data, it doesn't seem to be affecting them?
No.
So what is your, so I guess this leads into my second question, if that's okay. You mentioned that when you're talking about your road trip with your kids, having a roadmap, having a plan of, okay, we're going to stop here. This is a victory, I guess, the bathroom break.
Yeah.
I know that you were saying that marketing is your main focus. When is the next stopping point? Not really stopping point, but the next mile mark, the next milestone in the road to back to life.
Yeah, what's interesting, I was thinking about your question about the European countries. What's different about the European countries and like America is America's one of 4 that allows abortion up until the moment of birth. We're with China, Canada, and North Korea. I really don't want to be with those countries in anything, by the way. I love Canada, it's pretty, but most other things I don't want to be compared to Canada. So it's really, what's interesting about those other countries is they've regulated abortion down a lot of times to the first trimester very early on. It's an interesting tactic that the abortion lobby, and there was an interesting op-ed in the New York Times like 5 years ago by David Brooks. He's a pro-choice liberal columnist. I think he left because of the great, cancellation scourge or somehow he got canned or did something, but it wasn't anything bad, but it was something. He spoke reasonably to the New York Times, but he wrote an article that I thought, if the Democrats were smart, this is what they do. And his argument was the European countries, you don't see the fervor for the pro-life movement, right? It's kind of it's a neutralized thing, and the reason is that they have regulated abortion so much that there is no late-term abortion. And that's something that no matter who you are, it offends your sensibilities when you hear about late-term abortion. And that his argument was that, look, the majority of abortions in the first trimester, Democrats should appear to be the great compromisers. compromise with the pro-lifers, ban abortions in the third and second trimester when majority of abortions aren't being committed anyway. You'll look like the great compromisers on this issue. You'll look like the reasonable people, and you really won't affect abortion numbers. But yet you'll neutralize the pro-life movement. And I actually think that's a pretty effective tactic, because a lot of people would be like, people don't listen to the full news story. They'd be like, oh, we already solved that abortion thing, right? It's solved. And you'd be like, no. I mean, it would be a lot more work on our front. Be like, no, it's not solved. We saved like 12,000 babies, but there's still 850,000 are dying every year. And so I think that's one of the, things that it makes it a little different between our country and their countries, is that the American abortion movement has been relentless and dogged in keeping abortion legal in all 9 months. Now, when you're thinking about mile markers in our fight, we achieved a lot during the Trump administration. Love him or hate him, you don't have to like his tweets or the words that come out of his mouth. There are babies today who are alive, toddlers today, walking this earth because of Donald Trump. That is a fact. And because of the policies he instituted, because of the people he hired, personnel's policy. We achieved a lot of things. We talked about this today on a team meeting, the Protect Life rule that said that, okay, you can't really get family planning money if you also work in an abortion facility. You can't co-locate, have an abortion facility and a family planning clinic, which is Planned Parenthood's might. This week, the Biden administration said, oh, don't worry, Planned Parenthood, all your money is restored, plus more. So I think for us, there's been about 18 to 20 states that have passed pain-capable legislation, meaning that at a time when science agrees that a child can feel excruciating pain during abortions, how they give anesthetic to children who are being operated on in utero of spina bifida, then surely these children should not be aborted. That will be significant. The goal right now is to get a split circuit decision to force that decision to go to the Supreme Court, for the Supreme Court to have to rule on pain-capable abortions. That will be a huge mile marker. There was a big mile marker that was just achieved this week in Ohio, I think on Wednesday, that no one paid attention to. In 2017, Ohio banned abortions just on Down syndrome people. They said it is discrimination to abort a child based on Down syndrome diagnosis because of their DNA code. Because that's what Nazis did. They killed people because of their DNA code. So immediately Planned Parenthood, all the abortion lobbies sued. There was an injunction. Just this week, the Sixth Circuit said that is correct. And actually, one of the judges actually compared this policy to Nazi Germany. He said, this is what Nazis did. And so they said, you can ban abortions because, now, a woman can still have an abortion on a child, commit an abortion on a child who has Down syndrome. She just legally can't tell the doctor, I'm killing it because he or she has Down syndrome. It was significant for me because I have children with CF, and 90% of children with CF, just like children, CF actually has a more fatal diagnosis in the womb. 90% of children with CF are aborted in the womb. So it was significant for me that, wow, this was the first time court, and I don't know if the abortion lobby will appeal this, because if they do, it'll go to the Supreme Court, and then they will have to sound like the monsters that they really are. And I don't think supporting people with Down syndrome has kind of become in vogue now. Like the Gerber baby last year had Down syndrome, and Target made a big deal about their inclusivity. They've got, transgender babies and Down syndrome babies as models now. Like they're all so everyone in our society has kind of said oh, we should respect people with Down syndrome. They're people just like us. So I don't know if they'll take this to the Supreme Court, but it is a significant challenge to Roe, because this isn't talking about a woman. So everything that the court has always said is it's about a woman's right to the abortion and access to abortion. This is the first case that's saying it doesn't matter about access. You cannot discriminate against another human being because they have a different chromosome. They have an extra chromosome than you. It's a human being. That is, and I get goosebumps talking about, because that is actually a significant case that no one really knows, because all this crap has been happening in Washington. That's significant. So here in Arizona, they're trying to pass a bill right now that will do the same thing. It will ban abortion if a woman for cystic fibrosis, for Down syndrome, she will not be able to use adverse prenatal diagnosis as a reason to kill a human being, to discriminate against another human being. And that it's actually going to help. What happened in Ohio is probably going to help get this bill passed here in Arizona. So hopefully it passes in the next week or so. But that is actually, I think, a very important marker in our fights to start saying these are discriminatory abortions. We are choosing to discriminate against another human being because of their genetic code, because they're younger than us, they're weaker than us. That's going to start changing the game.
Do you have fear, though, that might cause us to compromise, just like in Europe?
I'm not going anywhere.
I know you're not, but like as a nation, right? In our political sphere, instead of, which it sounds very messed up to think that we would go down that route, but definitely something to think about.
No, I don't think banning abortions, I think it'll actually only further to serve to paint the abortion industry for the monster that it is.
Okay.
Planned Parenthood was on the lawsuit, sued to be able to defend the right. They're actually against, there's a bill, former Congressman Trent Franks from here wrote a bill when he was in Capitol Hill called PRENDA, the Prenatal Non-Discrimination Act, and said you can't choose to have an abortion because you don't like the gender of your child. And the feminists disagreed with it. Do you know what gender is aborted? If you look in Asia and India, it's girls. Girls are valued less than men. And the feminists, Planned Parenthood, the abortion industry says, nope, if she wants to kill a baby because she has a vagina, go for it. So I think it actually shows just how callous, how extreme they will go in their quest to end human life. So, and I'm not going anywhere, and you guys aren't going anywhere, so we're good.
Well, thank you for having this talk. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for coming out. Any other questions? No one? I didn't make anybody mad. Surely I pissed off somebody. I didn't make Bernadette mad, but.
So other than the FDA, the new rule that the FDA just released, what are some other ways that the abortion industry is looking forward to and some creative ways that they're looking to increase the number of abortions?
Well, it's all about chemical abortion. You know that. Chemical abortion is the cash cow. It's going to be cheaper for them, easier for them to conscript abortionists and abortion clinic workers. I think that's the thing. What's interesting to me, and I don't know if you saw it this summer in like the Post, Washington Post or Time, no, it was Post. There was an article about missed period pills. Have you seen that? So something that you'll see, the abortion industry, like what I said earlier, is no matter how many years go by, they still can't convince people that abortion's good. Like, as human beings, we just think it's something icky about. The top 3 words that people hear when they hear the word abortion is death, killing, sadness. And that's regardless of whether or not they're pro-choice or pro-life. Like, that's the words that you hear. But what's interesting is the abortion lobby is trying to stop calling them chemical abortion pills. They want to call them missed period pills. That's why these no-test abortions are so dangerous, because then she doesn't actually ever have to know if she was pregnant or not. So then she doesn't really have to have guilt, because maybe she had an abortion, but maybe she didn't. It's better not knowing. And I actually think that's where they're going to go. They want abortions to be as early as possible, and they don't even want her to know whether or not she's pregnant. So then she doesn't really have to worry about being guilty because she had an abortion. And that's the way for them to overcome what's happening. And women are going to die. Women are going to be harmed. Women are going to be rendered infertile because of this, but it's going to help them achieve their agenda. So I actually think that's what's coming in a big way. Obviously on college campuses in California, what we saw, it's going to be on every college campus. They want abortion, drugs, chemical abortion on college campuses. Not only do they want Amazon delivering it to you, they want you to be able to go to your campus health center and your student funds to be paying for abortions. So, yeah.
Thanks. So can we do like a scenario, if you will, like not like role play, I guess, but just like, can I pose a scenario to you? Okay. Yeah. So let's say this didn't happen, just for the record.
Okay.
But let's say my girlfriend got pregnant, or I got my girlfriend pregnant,
Mm-hmm.
and she wants an abortion. What would I say to her as like her partner about that? Like, I personally am like against it, but she just is gonna do it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what would you like say to that, or what advice would you give?
I think the biggest thing you can do immediately is show her that you support her, that you're going to help her and get her out of the crisis. That tunnel I talked about, that tunnel vision of like, let's sit down, let's talk about the options, let's figure this out. Like, what would this look like? Let's entertain what it would look like for you to deliver this child. Whether, you relinquish parental control and give me control, or we place with an adoptive family, or whether we decide to parent the child together. You've got to slow down the crisis in her mind. I think that's really important, and to show her that you're there, you're not going anywhere, and you would be a true partner in this. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Yeah, I mean, I don't start yelling at her and be like, you're a baby killer, that's not going to help. But try to slow down the crisis, because her head's going like a million miles a minute and she's panicking, and there's all of these things that she's thinking of, and the conversations she's had with her dad, her mom, like, don't get pregnant, it'll ruin your life. And, actresses who say it fucking ruins everything. Like, she's hearing all of this, and you've got to like calm that down and say, let's have an actual discussion about what way would having our child ruin your life. Let me find the resource, the person, the organization that will help solve whatever problem that it is. And maybe it's 4 or 5 problems. Does that help?
Yes, it does.
All right.
Thank you very much.
And don't get your girlfriend pregnant. Try really hard not to. Any other questions? It's actually very simple how not to get pregnant, but it's apparently pretty hard. But they like to think that sometimes I had at one school, someone shouted out at me. This is still being live cast, so be careful, but no one's watching now. Someone shouted out to me, like, have you never had an orgasm? Like, I was like, and my husband was actually watching at the time. And he was like, go ahead, tell him. It was pretty funny, because he's like texting right now with something else. But it was funny because the insinuation is, if you're pro-life, if you're anti-abortion, you hate sex. That you don't have enjoyable or pleasurable sex, which actually statistically is not true. I actually have some studies in here. I'm too lazy right now to get them out. But married people and religious married people actually have the best sex. And I was like there's anecdotal proof too, because like go to like churches on Sunday mornings, and who has all the minivans, and if you go to a Catholic church, 15-passenger buses of kids, like we clearly have lots of sex, because for most people you don't just have sex once and produce a kid. Like, it takes some time to make that happen. So sex isn't our problem, but I think that's the hard thing when we talk about abortion, because what we're saying is, if you acknowledge that what's inside of a woman is a unique, whole, living human being, and you acknowledge that human being has value and dignity, and you acknowledge an abortion is violent, but yet you're still engaging in premarital sex, if you're having sex randomly with strangers that you couldn't envision yourself being an 18-year-long financial relationship and emotional relationship with, then you have to make some decisions in your life. Like, you can be pro-life and be hooking up with men or women all the time. Like, you can do those two things. But if you're that person, you also have to acknowledge that there are natural consequences to your decisions and to your behavior. And choosing abortion is selfishness, because you're putting yourself over someone else. And that is, for some reason, the hardest pill that people have to swallow, is that having heterosexual sex comes with consequences. I mean, you can have homosexual sex and you won't produce another human being. I mean, that's a whole other thing, and I'm not talking about that. But I mean, there's one option, but that's, if you're a heterosexual and having heterosexual sex, you could produce another human being. And that's just biology, and I didn't do that. That was God, so. There you go. There's your biology lesson for tonight. As you can imagine, the sex talk with me and my children is going to go over really well. We've already started having it, and it's already been awkward as heck. So. Oh, yeah. So if you want to look for a fairly qualified health center, I mentioned that there's 8,000 fairly qualified health centers across the country. They do everything Planned Parenthood does, plus way more, minus the abortion. And if you need a health service that they don't offer, they're actually legally mandated to make sure you get to a center that does. You can go to findahealthcenter.hrsa.gov and just put in your zip code. I actually go to a fairly qualified health center because I live in a rural, because they're in underserved rural and urban neighborhoods. And there's 8,000 of them. They're federally funded. They serve 21 million men, women, and children every year. If every single Planned Parenthood in America would shut down tomorrow, it'd be awesome. Every fairly qualified health center would only have to see 2 more patients a week to make up the difference. So Planned Parenthood can go away. It's not a big deal. So we don't need them. Which part? Findahealthcenter.hrsa.gov. HRSA is HRSA, it's Human Resources Services Administration. It's an acronym. It's part of the Department of HHS, Health and Human Services. And if you work in government, you get to learn acronyms. It's a lot of fun. Any other things I missed?
No, I was just going to mention to you that podcast.
Oh, yeah. I only curse a little bit in it. I only curse a little bit in it. It's not a lot.
I just don't put the explicit and search type of
Yes. Learned that one the hard way. Yes. But yeah, we interview like all the different pro-life leaders. We've done Pro-Life 101. This season we're doing having hard conversations. So we've talked about IVF, birth control. We've talked about all kinds of hard, fun things. You can invite me to a party because it's always fun. Thanks, guys.